This was the week AI showed up as a cyber weapon and a cyber shield, a classroom tool and a child safety concern, a business engine, and a political fight over who gets to write the rules. We are now watching the AI system move into society. Welcome back to the Business and AI podcast. This is your weekly AI roundup for April 5th through April 11th, 2026. And this week had a very different texture from the usual model release cycle. The biggest signal was not simply that AI is getting better, it is that AI is spreading into the places that shape everyday outcomes: security, media, law, education, infrastructure, and family safety. So let's walk through the week the way it actually felt, not as a list of headlines, but as a story about where this is all going. The week opened with a chilling question. What happens when AI gets very good at finding the weak points in the software the world depends on? Anthropic pushed that question into the spotlight on April 7th with Project Glasswing, giving selected partners access to Claude Mythos Preview for defensive cybersecurity work, after saying the model had identified thousands of meaningful vulnerabilities. That instantly raised the stakes because this is the kind of capability that can save institutions a fortune if it stays in defensive hands and cause chaos if similar systems spread faster than safeguards do. What makes this more than a niche security story is that it tells us where some of the first undeniable AI value may show up. Not in novelty, not in clever demos, but in preventing very expensive disasters. And if you are wondering where ordinary people fit into that, look at the skills that sit around the technology: risk analysis, auditing, governance, security operations, compliance. The winners are not only the people building the models, they are also the people who know how to use them responsibly when the stakes are high. Then Meta came in with one of the week's loudest statements: do not count us out. On April 8th, it launched Muse Spark, the first model from its superintelligence team, and said it is rolling into Meta AI across the company's giant consumer surface area, from WhatsApp and Instagram to Facebook, Messenger, and smart glasses. That matters because Meta is not trying to win the AI race only with model quality. It is trying to win by putting AI exactly where billions of people already spend their time. That is a very important clue for anyone trying to understand where consumer AI is headed. The next useful assistant may not arrive through a separate app you download just for AI. It may simply appear inside the platforms you already use to message people, discover content, and shop. So for viewers, there is a practical lesson here. Do not just watch labs, watch distribution. In technology, the thing that reaches people first often matters more than the thing that looks smartest on paper. OpenAI, meanwhile, had one of those weeks that made the whole market feel more real. On April 8th, Reuters reported that the company plans to reserve a portion of future IPO shares for retail investors. Then on April 9th, Reuters reported projected ad revenue of $2.5 billion for 2026. Put those two signals together and the picture sharpens quickly. Consumer AI is not just trying to be impressive. It is trying to become a mainstream business machine with familiar levers like advertising, public markets, and mass adoption. That is where the story gets personal. Once a product becomes ad-driven and mass market, your attention is no longer just attention. It becomes inventory. That does not make the product bad, but it does change the incentives around it. So the smartest stance for everyday users is not fear, and it is not blind excitement. It is awareness. Ask what the tool is optimizing for, because when AI becomes free, convenient, and everywhere, the business model starts shaping the experience. And almost on cue, OpenAI ran into the hard limits of scale. On April 9th, Reuters reported that OpenAI paused its main UK data center project over regulation and energy costs. Then on April 10th, Reuters reported that the European Commission was assessing whether ChatGPT search could face tighter treatment under the Digital Services Act after disclosed EU user numbers crossed the relevant threshold. In other words, growth is still exciting, but growth now runs through power grids, permits, regulators, and political institutions. This is one of the most useful reality checks from the week. AI is not just a software story anymore. It is a land, energy, and governance story too. That means entire regions can win or lose based on whether they can support compute, write workable rules, and attract long-term investment. And for ordinary people, this is another reason to stop thinking of AI as something abstract happening in the cloud. The cloud is physical now. It has costs, politics, and bottlenecks. Google took the conversation in a different direction, but an equally important one. On April 8th, it launched notebooks in Gemini, linking chats, files, and project context in one place, and syncing that work with Notebook LM. That may sound modest next to giant model launches, but it points to a deeper shift in how these tools are evolving. The future assistant is not just the one that gives a clever answer. It is the one that can stay with your project, remember the context, and help you move from scattered prompting to sustained work. That is where regular users can gain an edge immediately. The people who benefit most from AI over the next year may not be the people asking the most dazzling questions. It may be the people who learn how to build repeatable systems around their own work, whether that is studying, planning, job hunting, writing, or running a side business. AI becomes much more valuable the moment it stops being a toy and starts becoming your workflow. Then came one of the week's most human stories. On April 8th, OpenAI released its child safety blueprint, framing AI-enabled child sexual exploitation as an urgent challenge and laying out a policy framework for stronger safeguards and coordination. This matters because it brings the AI debate down from the level of theory and into the level of family life. Suddenly, the question is not just whether AI is powerful, it is whether the systems being built around us are safe enough for the people least able to protect themselves.
And that has consequences far beyond one company. It tells platforms, developers, and policymakers that child safety cannot be an optional add-on. It has to be built into design, deployment, and enforcement from the start. For parents, schools, and ordinary users, the takeaway is simple but serious. Treat AI the way we eventually learn to treat the internet and social media. Useful, yes. Potentially transformative, yes, but never something to hand over to children without boundaries, literacy, and a real expectation of safeguards. At the same time, the legal fight over AI rules became much more concrete. On April 9th, Reuters reported that XAI sued Colorado to block enforcement of the state's AI law, escalating a much bigger battle over whether oversight should be driven by states or centralized in Washington. What makes that important is what the law touches: algorithmic discrimination in areas like employment, housing, healthcare, education, and finance. So, this is not some faraway bureaucratic fight. It is about whether AI systems that shape real opportunities in people's lives face meaningful accountability. This is also a signal that AI companies are entering the same phase other powerful industries eventually enter: the courtroom phase. Product strategy is no longer enough. Regulatory strategy is now part of the business model. And for ordinary people, this is one more reason to pay attention to state level policy. The rules that affect your job application, loan experience, or access to services may arrive locally before they arrive nationally. One of the strongest AI stories of the week came from far outside the usual US lab rivalry. On April 10th, South Africa released a draft national AI policy proposing a national AI commission, an AI ethics board, and an AI regulatory authority, while also offering incentives like tax breaks, grants, and subsidies to help build local AI capacity. That is a powerful development because it shows countries are no longer just waiting to consume AI built elsewhere. They are trying to shape the institutions that will govern and benefit from it at home. There is a bigger message here for viewers everywhere, especially those outside the biggest tech hubs. AI opportunity does not only belong to whoever trains the largest model, it also belongs to whoever builds local relevance, the policy, the education, the entrepreneurship, and the public trust needed to make the technology useful in context. That is how entire regions position themselves, and it is also how individual professionals and founders can think about their own place in this wave. Google Research also had one of the week's more meaningful research runs, and not because it was flashy. On April 8th, it introduced PaperViz Agent and Scholar Peer, two agents aimed at helping with academic figures and peer review. Then, on April 9th, it introduced ConvApparel, a dataset and evaluation framework designed to measure the realism gap in LLM-based user simulators. That may sound technical, but the core issue is simple. If you are going to use AI agents in the real world, You need better ways to test whether they behave realistically and reliably. That is where the opportunity shifts for a lot of workers. Prompting is useful, but evaluation is where trust gets built. The people who can judge outputs, spot weak simulations, and design better testing loops are becoming more valuable as AI gets more capable. In other words, the next premium human skill may not be writing the first draft. It may be knowing how to check whether the draft deserves to be trusted. Google also made a quieter but more socially important move in education. On April 7th, it said a new Catholic school educator group would make AI training available to 146,000 educators serving 1.6 million students. Then on April 9th, Google said more than 400 higher education institutions across all 50 states had joined its AI for Education Accelerator. That tells you the AI race is no longer just a model race. It is a literacy race. It is a workforce race. It is a question of who learns early enough to be comfortable with these tools before they become basic expectations. This matters for business because hiring pipelines are changing. It matters for society because access to AI literacy can widen or narrow future opportunity gaps. And it matters for everyday people because the advice here is wonderfully straightforward. Do not wait for a future training moment that may never come. Start learning now in small practical ways because the people who become fluent before AI is mandatory will have a much easier time when everyone else is scrambling to catch up. Another clue came from the legal world. On April 7th, Reuters reported that Harvey and Lagora are offering free access to AI legal tools at top law schools, trying to win future lawyers before they even enter practice. That is a smart move commercially, but it also tells us something deeper about how AI adoption works. The battle is not just for today's users, it is for tomorrow's habits. Once a generation learns a tool during training, that tool has a much better shot at becoming the default later on. And this is not just about law. The pattern travels. Whether you are in education, design, policy, operations, healthcare, or media, the tools entering training environments today are likely to become workplace norms tomorrow. So the real opportunity is not simply using AI once in a while, it is getting ahead of the normalization curve in your own field before the curve rolls over you. And then there was the smallest story on the list, which may end up being one of the most revealing. On April 8th, TechCrunch reported that Tubi became the first major streaming service to launch a native app inside ChatGPT. On the surface, that sounds like a neat entertainment feature. Underneath, it hints at something much bigger. AI assistants are slowly becoming discovery layers for the services we use, not just answer engines for questions we ask. That creates a new gatekeeping question. If assistants start steering what we watch, buy, read, and click, then convenience and influence begin arriving together. Businesses will want to be visible inside those layers. Consumers will enjoy the speed, but all of us will need to watch who is shaping taste, recommendation, and attention behind the scenes. The future of AI may not only be about intelligence, it may also be about who stands between people and choice. So that was the real shape of the week. AI moved deeper into cybersecurity, deeper into platform competition, deeper into education, deeper into law, deeper into family safety, and deeper into the political fight over governance. The common thread through all of it is this: AI is becoming less visible as a novelty and more powerful as infrastructure. And that means the advantage is shifting toward the people who do more than admire it. The advantage is going to the people who learn it, question it, guide it, and build with it before it becomes ambient. That is your AI Roundup for the week of April 5th to April 11th, 2026. Like, comment, and subscribe for weekly AI content you can digest and personalize. See you next week.